wash our hands, onto our elbows. These are the things we know, we know. If people want to wear a mask, that is okay. These are the things we know. To prevent you from speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly. I'm not a medical expert. These are the things we know. Keep 2 meters apart. What I have heard from medical experts. These are the things we know. To prevent you from speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly, speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart, speaking moistly, speaking moistly.
All right. All right. Let's get on to some serious stuff. Let's get on to the things that matter. Let's get on to the important things in life, right? Let's get on to the Battle of the Bands. All right. So, Metallica versus Iron Maiden. A classic matchup of two titans in the heavy metal music industry. So I will give you first kind of an opening perspective on both of these bands, and I'll let you know what I think, and then we'll go through there, and then we'll take a more objective look at just which one really comes out on top. So I have kind of an interesting personal story with both of these bands, right? We'll start with Iron Maiden. So in the summer of 1983, I got a few years on me, so I've been around a while, and I was out in the summer of 1983 with my cousin. And, you know, I was very excited that summer because a new album came out that I wanted to get. This is in the early 80s, and this is when albums were kind of at their peak. And a new album came out, and you'd hear it. They'd start promoting it on radio stations and things like that. Remember, there's no internet, there's no texting, there's no Twitter, nothing that would give you this information. It just kind of bubbles up through word of mouth. So you hear about a new album and you want to go get it because you want to see what the album cover is. You want to look at it. You want to run home with this thing. You want to play every song. That's the excitement. And in the summer of 1983, Def Leppard had come out with Pyromania. And I had heard the first song on Pyromania that they released, the first single, and it was Rock Till You Drop, and it was awesome. And so I wanted to go get this, but my cousin wanted to get Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast. And so we both raced off to the record store in Winnipeg, both got our albums. And, you know, I saw his and I was kind of skeptical of it. Like Iron Maiden's, if you recall, it has a building with a window blowing out of it, right? Number of the Beast has Eddie, you know, this devil, satanic looking kind of creature with long hair, and he's skinny like a rocker and all that stuff, right? But, you know, we had one record player, so we had to take turns playing it. And over the course of the summer, we were there for about a month together. And over the course of that month, I began thinking to myself, shit, I actually kind of like Iron Maiden better than Def Leppard. And I didn't want to admit it to him, right? Because he was always, oh, Iron Maiden. I was always, oh, yeah, Def Leppard. But once I got back home, one of the first things I did is I went out and bought Iron Maiden because I was just so impressed with just the power of the lyrics. Like, you know, I mean, it just belts out at you. The guitar just has a power. The lead singer, Bruce Dickinson, just zeroes in. And it was really, really just, it was kind of a new level of music that hadn't really come out in terms of just the musicianship and the woven lyrics and the vocals. It was all just super impressive, right? So that's kind of my history, my beginning with Iron Maiden. Now Metallica was a little bit of a different story. So I hadn't heard any Metallica, but I had heard of them. Like, the rockers would kind of, yeah, Metallica. And I thought, yeah, okay. I was sort of an occasional headbanger rocker, but I was kind of more of a jock. So I kind of was in and out of that. But one time I was riding with Dwayne actually, and a guy named Todd Bowen, if he's out there, wherever. Hey, Todd. Todd was driving. Dwayne was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back, high as a kite. And Todd put on Master of Puppets, a cassette, right? And I'd never listened to it before. And so he dropped in the Metallica cassette, Master of Puppets, and that song, Master of Puppets, came on. And I just laid back, man, as chill as anything, just laid back and absorbed it. And Dwayne, to his credit, he air drummed the entire thing and in perfect time too. It was pretty impressive, Dwayne, pretty impressive. But anyways, that was my first exposure. And, I was in an altered state of mind. Yeah, but I just listened to it and I was just blown away, man, like blown away. I just thought, holy shit, this is the music for me. It was just so energetic and so powerful and so different. Like, it had a different sound to it. The guitars were different and they were fast and they were just masculine and aggressive. And I was hooked after that, right? I was hooked on Metallica and Iron Maiden, for that matter, after both those experiences. So let's get in and see which one is in fact the king of heavy metal. Metallica formed in 1981 in California. Iron Maiden formed in 1975 in Leighton, a part of London, England. Commercial success. Metallica. This was the first album release. So we're comparing first albums here. Metallica's first album was Kill 'Em All. Iron Maiden's first album was just titled Iron Maiden. And in my opinion, it is always a bit of a mistake to do a self-titled album. Is it ever a good idea? Like, it's always awkward in conversation when you want to reference an album and say, yeah, the Iron Maiden by Iron Maiden. What? Iron Maiden, the group, or no, the album? It's just confusing. Whereas with Metallica, you can say, yeah, Kill 'Em All. And for branding, marketing, and all that stuff, it's just smarter not to self-title an album, in my opinion, right? And of course, Iron Maiden, there really is no super memorable songs from their debut album. They hadn't really grooved into their style and their form yet. Whereas Metallica came right out of the gate with some pretty impressive stuff. The title track, Kill 'Em All, was an amazing song. And to think that, these are 20-year-old kids writing this song. And it's like a 7-minute song, and it's got multiple stanzas, and it's iconic even to this day. Even to this day, you can get it, and you can listen to that song, and it stands up to time very well. It was more of a traditional kind of heavy metal sound, but you could see kind of the origin of what was unique about Metallica. And they also had the Four Horsemen on that song, which was also Dave Mustaine from Megadeth was also an original contributor to this album. And he redid the Four Horsemen with the name The Mechanics, which didn't make much sense to me. Four Horsemen was a much better name. But anyways, I digress. So debut album, winner, Metallica. Peak years. So the peak years for Metallica, I would put as 1986 to 1991. 1986 to 1991. And yeah, I could kind of stretch that out. Kill 'Em All, like I said, was a great debut album. Ride the Lightning was another good album. So really from 1983 to 1981 were great years, but their absolute peak years, I think you have to go with 86 to 1991. Iron Maiden, on the other hand, I'm going to say they win the peak years, because from 1982 to 1984, they put out 3 albums in 3 years. And it's crazy because I told you that story. In 1983, I had bought the album Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. And when I got back home and I got to school and I started in grade 8, I saw another album by Iron Maiden. I'm like, oh, what's this? I thought I just got their album. No, this one just came out. and it was Peace of Mind. And then, within a year, Power Slave had come out, and these are all fantastic albums. So peak years go to Iron Maiden just because they were so prolific. They put out 3 incredible albums in 3 years. Like any one of those albums would have been like a career defining moment for another band. It would have been one of the best albums, heavy metal albums of all time, right? So I gave them the nod on that. Peak albums. So again, we have the top albums that represent their peak. And, one of the things with musicians, I mean, not just heavy metal, but with any musician, and this was one of those things that sorry, I just had a visit. Oh, hold on. Come in for a second. Come in and say hi. Come in and say hi. Come here. Come in and say welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Okay, off you go. All right, so peak albums. Like if somebody has a hit album, that's impressive, right? And if somebody has a follow-up album, then that is super impressive. And that's what creates superstars, right? Like there are bands and singers that come out and they have a great album and then they fade away, right? I mean, you have one-hit wonders, but then you have one album wonders too. One album is generally enough to cement you as a star of sorts. But when a band comes out with a great album and then their follow-up album is as good or sometimes even better, then that's what starts to elevate them into superstar status. And we see this with Iron Maiden. They had Number of the Beast, elevated to Peace of Mind, and then Power Slave, which wasn't quite as good as those other two. But those 3 songs in a 3-year period, that is incredible. They're all 3 great albums. But the winner is Metallica, because these 3 peak albums, you have Master of Puppets, which is completely groundbreaking in terms of the style and the sound, and Justice for All, which goes from what Master of Puppets was and amps it up even more to just more of a riff-driven melodic sound that just completely carries the album. And then to the Black Album, which I know a lot of people are not, a lot of people kind of trash the Black Album because it's a departure. It's more commercial. It's a little more mainstream, of course. But the album itself is an incredible album. I mean, if that, remember, you're judging it next to And Justice for All and Master of Puppets, right? So it has a bit of a different sound to those. However, the sales are incredible. And let's face it, if a new band came out today and they released the Black Album today, you would be blown away, right? So, peak albums, Metallica. Those 3 albums in heavy metal are just about untouchable in my opinion. So, musicianship. This one goes to Iron Maiden. And this one is not that close, to be honest. I mean, the Iron Maiden lineup, you have Steve Harris, you have Dave Murray on guitar, Nico McBrain on drums, Adrian Smith, Bruce Dickinson. I mean, Bruce Dickinson singing mostly, right? But in the early days, this would have been a closer competition. Metallica had Cliff Burton, the bassist, who was, probably the best bassist in heavy metal history, or close to it. James Hetfield himself as a guitarist is, in my opinion, one of the best out there. And Dave Mustaine when he was with the band. So their early days, they were up there in terms with anybody in terms of musicianship in the early days. And Lars Ulrich, who we kind of shit on him now, to be honest. But, back in the 80s, Lars Ulrich was a pretty good drummer. Drummers have really kind of moved beyond his ability now. But, in his day, he was okay. But overall musicianship, I have to give that to Iron Maiden. Just if you really want to be impressed, listen to a live version of "Hallowed Be Thy Name" by Iron Maiden. So this is an intricate 7 or an 8-minute song, and they play it live, and everybody is in time, and it's just absolutely beautiful to listen to. It is perfect. These guys. Best frontman. Well, this one I really couldn't pick a winner, so I decided to call it a tie. I mean, Bruce Dickinson has almost become an archetype of a heavy metal frontman. You know, that high pitched wailing voice. You know, the decadence, the stage presence. He is really iconic in terms of a frontman image. Hetfield's a little more unique. He's got, I don't know if I want to say a more original sound. Maybe it is more original in terms of heavy metal. I mean, Bruce Dickinson is kind of original, but he's more imitated. James Hetfield's sound kind of paved the way for grunge in some respects in terms of a more sort of gravelly baritone type singing voice. He's not quite as acrobatic and athletic as Bruce Dickinson is on stage, but he plays guitar. He plays guitar way better than Bruce Dickinson plays any instrument. But Bruce Dickinson flies a plane. So you got the lead singer of a heavy metal band that can pilot not just a plane, not just a Cessna. Like a Cessna is not that hard to fly. I can fly a Cessna. I've done it. But he flies jets. That's not an easy thing to learn, okay? Jets are, it's not like driving a bus or driving a small plane. Jets are hard, okay? And Bruce Dickinson does this. I don't know how much dope the guy has smoked in his life, or if he's smoked any for that matter, but the fact that he can get in and he can fly them in a jet around the world, you know, that bumped him up. That made up for the guitar playing, in my opinion. So big-brained influence. Now, one of the things we see with both of these bands and a lot of bands from this era that you almost never see now is they take literature, passages from literature or stories or parables, and they craft them into incredible songs, right? And these guys have both done that. Metallica has done a few songs. James Hetfield himself has said that he's a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft, and they pay tribute to H.P. Lovecraft in The Call of Cthulhu. And Iron Maiden's the winner on this score, though. They've made a song called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which was inspired by Samuel Taylor Coleridge's 1797 poem. I mean, that alone is very impressive. A lot of people got through some history just by listening to that song. And they've also done a song called The Flight of Icarus, which is based on ancient Minoan mythology from Crete. So if you can take ancient Minoan mythology and craft a beautiful hit song out of it, that's pretty good, right? So I gave Iron Maiden the edge in this. Output. Iron Maiden wins this as well. So from 1975 to the present day, which is a long time, what's that, 45 years? Iron Maiden has put out 16 albums and 24 concert tours. Metallica has put out 10 albums, and these are studio albums, not compilation albums or some of this weird shit. Like Metallica did this stuff with a guy named Lulu that I won't even, let's all just forget it. Let's wipe it from our memories and pretend it doesn't even exist. That's such a travesty. Anyways, yeah, for that alone, I mean, okay, so 10 albums for Metallica, 21 concert tours. With concert tours, Metallica likes to do a lot of kind of small boutique tours. Like they'll do little 5-off things. So I only counted concerts where there was 20 dates or more. And 20 dates would be a small tour. But so Iron Maiden has been more prolific. They've put out more albums over a longer period of time and done more concert tours. Commercial success. The winner is Metallica. So Metallica has sold 125 million albums worldwide. That is a very impressive number. That's why those guys are so rich. And Iron Maiden has sold 100 million albums worldwide. And that is also very, very impressive. I was kind of surprised. I knew Metallica was up there. I didn't know Iron Maiden had crossed 100 million in albums sold, especially since, I mean, album sales in the last 20 years have not been great. But these guys, they had their most prolific days before the advent of the internet, for that matter, and, you know, digital downloading and Napster. I mean, we could put that as a mark against Metallica, their whole reaction to the Napster, but I mean, that was kind of more on Lars Ulrich, I would say. So overall, our winner is Metallica. And why is it Metallica? Well, okay, I'm just going to say that Metallica's success in the original sound that they had in the Master of Puppets, well, even Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, their first 5 albums were just so monumental and so incredible in terms of sound, originality, and just kind of doing something new and just creating their own genre almost. I mean, they kind of invented the speed metal, thrash metal genre, right? And they're still better than any of those bands, even if they're not faster, right? So for the fact that they were able to transition to something like the Black Album, you know, Load and Reload, which didn't do as well, but I mean, they've been able to transition into a very commercially successful band as well. You got to remember, with Metallica and Iron Maiden, back in the 80s, those guys were not on the radio. They were not on the radio except for special instances like a midnight show or something like that, where they would reference a new album coming out. But it was always just word of mouth. It was people passing around cassettes, playing albums at someone's house, no mainstream media at all. And as a matter of fact, Metallica was groundbreaking in this instance. This is something that kind of puts them over the top as well. When they came out with And Justice for All, they were invited to appear on the Grammys, and they played their song One, which by Metallica standards was a pretty tame song. But it was just a real classic moment in television history. And the winner of the Grammy for Best Heavy Metal Band that year was Womp Womp, Jethro Tull, which is not even a heavy metal band. And I mean, that was one of the great kind of Grammy faux pas of all time. So in terms of popular culture, Metallica has really worked their way in and elevated themselves above just about any other band, let alone just heavy metal. So there you go. That is our Battle of the Bands. The winner, the heavy metal winner, is Metallica. And we will leave it. It's nice to have a little bit of a change of pace, right? So for this wonderful April 8th, 2020, for everybody in the studio audience and all of you watching at home, I'm Rick Richards. And if we're all together, can't nobody stand against you.